everybody. This is Dan coming back at you. Hope everyone's doing well. Today is February 2nd, 2013, and it's Saturday morning, and I'm feeling great, nice and quiet down here. And my daughter's gone for a while. So I wanted to do a very quick video about women serving in the military. And I'm not going to speak about the physicality or the physical aspects or the requirements and make it sort of, because I want to avoid it being sort of like a sexist video, because that's the argument that a lot of people are making. I look at it from a different perspective altogether. In my honest opinion, I feel like if you meet the physical requirements and you can hold your own, do your thing. I have no problem with it at all. But let me tell you what I do have a problem with. As a man who has daughters, I personally have a problem with Leon Panetta authorizing the exploratory look into women serving on the combat lines. And I say exploratory because it's not yet approved by the armed forces. And the Marine Commandant recently came out and said he's not going to allow women to serve on the front lines of the Marines. And I have a problem with Leon Panetta doing that without addressing the first issue. And the first issue is, how do we resolve our female military members constantly being raped by their colleagues or their fellow soldiers, airmen, and Marines? I personally don't feel like you can go from step 1 to step 2 without addressing step 1 first. Now, we have a dynamic in the United States Armed Services where female soldiers can't even get out of basic training without being raped by their instructors or their fellow soldiers, fellow airmen. They can't even get out of basic training or specialized training. Then, once they get into combat theaters, and I'm going back to recent history, Iraq, there are a lot of cases of female soldiers being raped in theater, not like combat soldiers now. These are non-combat MOSs. We're not even talking about putting them on the front lines yet. But they have been raped, murdered, and the United States military is complicit in covering up what happened. There are two cases of black women who were very attractive women being raped and murdered, and the whole field is covered up. Their bodies were not released to their families. One soldier in particular, well, both soldiers, when their bodies came back to their families, the post-mortem or the autopsies were not released to their families. One soldier in particular did not have a brain, because what the Army tried to say was she fell and died. And as a result of her fall, she had an aneurysm and died right there on the scene. Even though reports from soldiers were not admitted in the final investigation, this woman was raped and hit on the head, okay? But to return her body to her family that were going to get a second autopsy without a brain, that just doesn't make sense to me. These families have been left in limbo. The United States military concocted wild stories. One of these soldiers in particular, they said she had an STD and that she was murdered by somebody in the unit. All lies. So I guess the question is, would you want one of your daughters to first be in the military and then second serve in a combat setting around soldiers in the combat MOS or combat field that do not normally interact with women in close proximity, are not used to that? And how would you feel about their safety? And I'm not talking about the enemy. I'm talking about their so-called co-workers or fellow soldiers, battle buddies. How would you feel about that? Me personally, I would not send my daughter or let my daughter join the United States Army, the United States Marines, none of that. Because I know what's going on, and I know how the government is covering up these sexual assaults. It's in the news every single day. We need look no further than the United States Air Force Academy, where all of these female soldiers over years have been sexually assaulted, raped, by people that were supposed to be entrusted with their training. So here you have basically a person who's in authority that takes advantage of a new soldier. What do you think is going to happen in the combat here? That's just my opinion. No, you can't do one without the other. First, you have to ensure the safety of these soldiers at boot camp. Then we can talk about the front line. That's just my opinion. Chime in, tell me what you feel, tell me what you think. And one quick caveat to this video. There are 3 countries that allow women in the front line. The first country is Canada, who rarely send soldiers to combat. So their female soldiers have not been tested in the combat setting. Secondly is Australia, once again, have not been tested in combat. Then the only battle-tested women in combat is from the country of Israel, who has an Israeli Defense Force. There are less than 3% of women on the combat line in Israel. And their own independent studies have said that the women were not as effective on the combat front line. They were ineffective. And in 2006, especially when they fought Hezbollah in Lebanon, the women endangered missions because of their combat ineffectiveness. So those are the studies. And that's the only precedent that we have to go off is the Israeli IDF, who says themselves that women are not as effective in combat. But one thing I give the IDF credit for is you don't hear about their women being raped and killed by their fellow soldiers like we do in the United States of America. Okay. Chime in, give me your opinion, and thanks for listening. Peace.